Good morning.
Good morning. Happy
Morning.
Friday,
Chris,
everyone.
thanks
We
for
made
joining
it.
us.
Yeah. We're we're in week, I think, 12 of the year already, which is kind of crazy to think about, and just a few weeks away from TIA. And we're all looking forward to that. And today we have Chris, who's the CEO at TIA. So Chris, thanks for joining us. You've been on, I think, a couple times on Freight Gong Friday, and it's good to have you back. Always good to learn what's going on politically in DC when it comes to logistics, and also what this year's TIA conference has in store. So looking forward to discussing that all with you. Thanks for joining.
So, thanks guys for having me on. Always appreciate the opportunity to come on the Freight Gong. So excited about it.
Chris,
Definitely.
you spend all your time in DC, right? Like, is that where you live right now?
Yeah, we're based in Alexandria, which is just right outside Washington D.C. I was born and raised in the area, so pretty much all I know.
Yeah. So
I've been on a price to DC, but heard it's getting pretty fun there.
And I'm not sure I'd use the term fun right now. I mean, sure, fun if
Depends,
depending on what side of the
depends
aisle
how you
you're
look
on.
at it.
But
Yeah,
it's interesting right now for sure. Yeah.
interesting. The better word. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool city though. It is.
Today we don't have Reed with us, unfortunately. He's packing his family up from a Disneyland trip or Disney World trip, so he won't be with us. So just us three. Chris, would love to hear from you some updates at TIA and your new role. That because I think right before the last time you spoke, it already was announced that you're going to be the CEO, but you're still transitioning into that role. So,
Yeah.
what's new at TIA? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, again, transition to certainly new to the role within terms of president and CEO. Took over officially, I think it was November 28th or somewhere around there. It was actually the same day that the FMCSA put out the notice post rulemaking on the broker transparency rule.
Right.
So I always joke with people, I was like, that was a nice gift from the agency for my first day. But yeah, I mean, new to the role, really enjoying it. It's an amazing opportunity to lead this organization. I've been with TIA a very long time. I've been with them about 14 years. So certainly familiar with the organization, familiar with all the different departments and the inner workings. When I first started with TIA 14 years ago, I think we had like maybe 10 employees, or maybe even less than that. So I was a lot of like boots on the ground training because we did everything. I was part of the government affairs department, but help with meetings, help with membership. Just a good 14 years of education in the association space, which led me to this position. Excited about it, and continuing the great work that Ann had done over the last 4 years, and Bob previous to that as our CEO, and just continue to move the organization forward.
Yeah, it's exciting. There must be a lot of, I guess, things going on that you're looking forward to, and I also know that politically speaking, in DC, things move a lot slower. You discussed that with us before. That things take time, and with President Trump now back in office, I know that you said last time on the call that like it doesn't really matter who's president because like things just move so slowly. But I'm curious, like, have you? What are some of the changes that you've noticed, or if there aren't any, like what's going on politically with the transparency stuff, the rate transparency, and any other legislation that might impact brokers or carriers?
Yeah, I would say in terms of Congress, it's still the same. Obviously, things are going to be slow. There's very slim majorities, especially in the House and the Senate. Republicans don't have 60 votes in the Senate, which is obviously the threshold to eliminate some of the triggers in terms of filibusters and delays. But I would say with this administration, I think it's been a little bit on like speed. I think they have certainly done a lot. If you agree or disagree with what they're doing, kind of put that aside. But they have certainly done a lot in the first, couple of months that they've been in office. It's really, I'm not sure if the administration that has hit the ground as fast as they have in terms of getting out executive orders and doing things. And just came out yesterday that Trump signed the executive order to kind of dismantle the Department of Education. So I'm not going to go into the politics of that, obviously. We're not an education association.
The speed of which
the speed is just
taking place, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a little bit of the fact that hey, he can't run again. and he's a little bit more loose and free this time. And you're certainly seeing that with the people he's putting into cabinet positions, people who are loyal to him. Somebody like Secretary Sean Duffy, who's leading the Department of Transportation now. I knew that when he was a congressman for Wisconsin. He's a good leader. He's a very good politician. I think he'll do well on that role. But again, like you said, there's a couple things we're focusing on. Obviously, the broker transparency. The second comment period, we thought that was a little odd. They reopened the comment period from a previous administration, but that closed yesterday. So there's thousands of comments that have been put in. So the agency will have to go through that and figure out the next direction on that. I don't think it's any secret on where TA is on this rulemaking. Probably don't have to go through our opposition to it. Fraud, obviously, something we're heavily focused on, as we talked about before. We expect, we had a conversation with FMCSA, it was last week, and they were kind of laying out their next steps in terms of how they're going to handle the issue of fraud by bringing in a private company, IDEMIA, which does all the TSA security at airports in the United States, to bring these folks in to do personal background checks on individuals. So when you go to apply for brokerage authority or carrier authority or freight forward authority, before you get to the payments page, there's going to be a QR code, and you're going to have to scan it. It's going to send you over to IDEMIA. You have to take a picture of your license, your passport, or some other, I think there's like 4 documents they accept. And then a picture of yourself. And then you're going to go through their background check, make sure you say who you are, make sure you're not, nefarious, a criminal. And then if you're accepted through that process, then you will be able to pay and get your authority to come in the industry. It's not, it's not going to be a silver bullet in terms of addressing fraud completely, but we think it's a very positive first step to weed off some of these folks from getting authority in the beginning. There's still going to be companies out there that are buying authorities and still taking advantage. And obviously a lot of the strategic theft in terms of phishing and identity theft and getting access to credentials, that's not going to help that, obviously, but helping them from the front end will be huge.
Yeah, well, that's interesting development. Do you know if like the brokerages and carriers that currently already are registered, will they have to also follow that process to, like, I don't know, renew anything or continue operating?
Yeah, not initially. This will be just for new entrants. I think they're going to probably put additional identity maybe checks in place in the future for existing companies. So kind of at the same time, this is due out. They said some point next month they're going to launch this for new entrants. At some point this year, potentially next year, they're going to launch a whole new registration system, and that will probably be the vehicle to trigger those kind of check-ins. Because carriers are required to file annual or biannual, like MCS 150. Like, here's my updated information. Brokers currently don't, but they want to put that in place. They've been talking about it for a while, putting that in place to do biannual updates.
What would you file though?
So really just file like who's your officer, what's your principal place of business, probably who your surety, who your trust is with, just kind of general information. Yeah. Certainly obviously different than the carrier side, but number of trucks and that type of thing. But yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So that's huge. I mean, that's something I believe a lot of people have been waiting for. And so that's good news. Anything else to look out for?
I mean, we're staying busy on a lot of different issues. The truck accidents and liability is one that we're heavily focused on, along with the carrier organizations. So we're keeping a close eye on that, trying to be an advocate with the administration and Congress on that front. Labor is something we were pretty heavily focused on under the previous administration. But we're hopeful that this administration will kind of revert back to some of the Trump 1.0 labor policies, where it wasn't necessarily more employee independent contractor over employee friendly. It was just provided a much more clarity in the process. Where with the Biden administration, like it or not, kind of muddy the waters a little bit in terms of what's that distinction. And they obviously do that deliberately to make it confusing and lead to potential litigation. So we just want a clear line on labor issues. So we'll follow that, obviously, but we're heavily focused on everything that's going on in the supply chain. Their Congress is already working on the big, massive highway reauthorization bill now. The funding levels expire next year, so they're getting a head start on it. So we'll obviously be pushing things for like fraud, and our fraud legislation we're pushing forward to have included in that as the vehicle to push that across the finish line.
Okay.
Chris, I have a question for you regarding the registrations on the carrier side, whether you're broker or carrier. What are your thoughts on the ability to currently register as a carrier with pretty much like any kind of personal, let's say, email address? So like, there's partially a reason why I kind of asked this, because of like the fact of obviously the growing theme around like fraud and that trying to counter that fraud. But have you seen any discussions about like maybe requiring companies that register as carriers to have business, like custom business domains at which they register off of?
Yeah, there hasn't been any discussion at the federal agency level in terms of requiring like a business email address. I know, there's been a lot of chatter in the industry about, concerns about using, when you see a Gmail or a Yahoo or, some sort of other platform for a personal email. I don't really know, I understand the concern of it, obviously. But it's probably not too difficult to go out and create kind of a business email address. So
You'd think so, right?
right. Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be difficult. I've never done it, but I wouldn't think it'd be too difficult. So, if you're one of these fraudsters, these are pretty sophisticated folks.
Very
I mean, these are very smart, very sophisticated what they're doing. So, they can certainly go out and create a business email as well. So,
yeah.
Is that a hurdle that, we should, put in place that may deter, some legitimate carriers that just don't want to kind of go through that hassle work and paperwork and just create their Gmail? I use my personal Gmail all the time for a lot of things.
I think it's more so. I think it's more so from a perspective of like there should be some type of an email address that's on file with FMCSA, what domain are people from your company authorized to reach out on behalf of this authority on, right? Because otherwise it's really difficult to pinpoint. Obviously then you have like Highway, which has a great solution. You can authenticate yourself, right? By saying you're part of that company with that authority. But there is obviously still some small level of friction there, and especially if they're not a Highway customer yet, but stuff like that. So
I see your point. I think it makes sense. It's just, I think it'd be interesting how they would certainly address that. But like I said, there's been no discussions at the agency level. They've been really focused on the principal place of business requirement. Well, them being Congress, FMCSA is not, because they're not enforcing it. That is a current regulation that they don't enforce. I think
wouldn't Congress actually pays attention to the kind of like the broker freight carrier side of things, since it doesn't seem like it's the FMCSA itself?
What was should Congress pay attention to it? Yeah.
No, I was asking like who individually in Congress kind of pays attention to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we work heavily with obviously the Transportation Committee, because they would have jurisdiction over issues like this. We have a piece of legislation that would do this particular thing with the principal place of business requirement, and it's led by the Congresswoman from Washington D.C. And a member of Congress from the state of Mississippi, gentleman named Mike Ezell, Congressman Mike Ezell, who's a former law enforcement officer. So obviously he gets the whole fraud crime aspect of it. But like I was saying, the principal place of business requirement, there's still 6,000 or so companies on the books that are using a PO box, not their legitimate principal place of business. There is a requirement for carriers, but there is no current requirement for brokers. Our legislation that we're working on would change that. Brokers should be required to do a principal place of business just the same as carriers.
So that would mean that I would not, as a broker, be able to. It seems like it would not allow me to register with one of these online websites that, for example, if the company is fully remote, we won't be able to get basically a virtual mailbox in which all the mail can get sent to. Like that wouldn't be permitted effectively, right?
Yeah, it'd have to be where, even if it's a remote, where your principal place of business is. And I get the concern of that because there's probably a lot of people that work out of their house.
Yeah.
And they probably don't want to put their personal address on there. So that's just something the agency is going to have to work towards. But Paul, we've talked about before about that address in Wyoming, where there was like 700 carrier trucking companies associated with one house. It is a processing agent that was there. But this has become like this notorious like fraud front. There was like this whole nutritional pyramid scheme that was going on there a number of years ago. Then it was the trucking companies that are all registering there using as their address, a lot of fraud. I just saw an article a couple weeks ago. A member sent me that there was a whole bunch of shadow companies that were illegally getting PPP loans during the pandemic that are all registered at this one house. So like, I don't know what's going on in 30 North Gould Street in Wyoming, but it's not good. So
Really,
someone has to go check it out. I think
the agency sent a team out. We brought it to their attention along with one of our members, and they sent an investigative team out, and they were like, "Yeah, there's no company operating out of this house." And I was like, "Well, what are you guys going to do?" And they're like, "Well, nothing. We're not really doing anything about it." So,
oh man, that's interesting. I got to go check out that street sometime and do like a Freight Caviar documentary.
Yeah.
But Chris, it would be awesome to discuss a little bit what TIA, I guess, like, well, first of all, it's coming up in less than 3 weeks. We're very excited. We can't wait for TIA. TIA is always like our favorite freight conference to go to. And, like there's like the learning labs, there's the networking, and there's like all the after event parties that are just great. I would love to just hear from you, like to maybe first tell us like what to expect at TIA this year. How would it differ maybe from other years? And is freight fraud still the main topic that everyone's going to be discussing? And I guess what's new and what's the same? And I'm going to also show the website here just so there's a content. But go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, we're obviously thrilled. Like you said, we're just a few weeks away from our annual conference in San Antonio, April 9th through 12th, right there at the JW Marriott in the Hill Country. Beautiful resort. Kind of on the front end, if you're a golfer, it's there's a TPC PGA course there, which is phenomenal as well. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the we try to pick Cindy and Jonathan on our team does an amazing job of really working through our membership to kind of highlight the big issues that are going on in the industry, and obviously fraud, technology. Obviously can always kind of rise to the top in terms of what's going on. And obviously, one thing that I'm heavily focused on is kind of, building those relationships up with our carrier friends and our shipper friends as well. So a couple sessions I'll highlight if I could. So like our keynote speaker this year is Frank Abagnale. So if anyone's seen the Steven Spielberg movie Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, that's Frank.
Wow.
So somebody who is obviously
that's cool.
A very young age was involved with fraud and forgery, and later became a consultant for the FBI, and has really kind of helped kind of crack down on the massive fraud that's going on in the industry. So
that's what they usually do, which is cool.
Yeah. So it'd be really cool to hear from him. I personally, I love the movie, seen it numerous times. So we're excited about that. Talking about the relationship with the carrier group. So we always do a shipper carrier broker panel where we kind of talk about main issues, topics going on in the industry, and how it's impacting the different segments of supply chain, and really trying to work towards solutions that as a win-win-win business opportunity for all the parties. So we've got a couple shippers join us this year. We'll have a couple brokers on there. And then we'll have Louis Pugh, who's the executive director for the Owner Operators Independent Driver Association, OIDA, who'll be joining us on the panel. I don't think in my 14 years, I don't think we've had OIDA come to the conference and speak. So that was one thing. Louis is a good friend. We don't agree on everything, obviously, with transparency. But I'd say 90% of issues we agree on. And Louis is a very passionate leader within the owner operator space, and appreciate the things that he's doing. So we're excited to have him join us. We're doing you always hear about these hackathons. So we're doing like a fraud. I think we're calling it a fraudathon. I don't know if I've ever heard that term before. But we're having like this 2-day interactive, like hackathon, but with fraud, where folks are going to get presented with different problems or fraudulent scenarios, and they kind of work through that as a group. And again, it's like over a 2-day period, so there's going to be a lot of interaction into that. So we're excited about that.
When is that?
I think we're starting that on Thursday, and then kind of wrapping it up Friday morning.
Is that like a continuous, all-nighter hackathon?
Yeah, I don't think we're not gonna force the people to sit there all out night at the tables, but yeah, I mean they're gonna get broken into groups, people that want to sign up for it, and interact when you're there, and then there'll be a period of time where you have to work through kind of the day on addressing the problem, and then kind of present the next day on what your findings and how you'd address a certain problem. You got the learning labs up. I think we have over 80 or 100 learning labs that are going on. So these are kind of the quick hitting, not so much of a formal session in the big ballroom, but at these nice kiosks where folks can come in and kind of talk about their product for 15 or 20 minutes. These are awesome. Like I said, you can really get your bang for the buck of just hitting these things really quick, these 30-minute sessions. And I'd say finally, as we've been talking about what's going on in Washington, D.C., which there certainly is a lot in terms of the political space. We're excited that Scott Jennings, who's a contributor from CNN, is going to be coming in and talking about everything that's going on in terms of the Trump administration. What should we address? What should we be, concerned about from an industry? What are voters looking? How are they thinking now that we're kind of a few months into this election? How the midterm election is going to shake out, tariffs, all the big key issues. Scott's a renowned political strategist, and like I said, he's on CNN every evening. Has really made a name for himself, and we're excited to have him join us. He's joined us in the past before. He's got a little bit more high profile now with his position on CNN, so we're excited to have him join us again.
Awesome.
That's exciting.
Very cool. Yeah, I meant, by the way, Chris, I meant by my definition of hackathons come from these college 2-3 day all-nighters that people would pull, and a bunch of people I don't know, sweaty nerds would just get into a room and just hack on something together. So I didn't exactly expect that to be at TIA, but I was like, wow, that would be pretty cool if it did.
So, that'd be cool.
Christian's going to be there all night.
I was like, honestly, we could definitely pull some people together in the Freight Tech community for that, for sure. I don't know how many people would do it to that extreme, but it'd be pretty cool.
That would be fun. Yeah.
But yeah.
Good
Chris,
stuff.
How long does planning take for TIA in general? Do you guys start the day right after the conference ends?
I think Cindy and her team take maybe a couple weeks off, but then they're really starting to go immediately in terms of getting things rolling for the next conference, for sure. I know we open up our trade show. Our trade show always sells out, and I've been to a lot of shows, and I'm probably biased, but I don't think there's any trade show that has the level of activity and energy that we do at a TIA. It's just amazing. And, I heard people say that when I first joined the organization, and I was like, sure. I've been to a lot of these shows, I'm sure it's great, but no, it truly is amazing. And it really is they weren't kidding. It really is kind of next level. But yeah, I know the trade show opens for the 26 show at the 25 show. So there'll be folks that are going in, getting their booth ready, really 64 days in advance in terms of the next show. That's how quickly it sells out, and then the demand. But yeah, Cindy and her team work pretty quickly. Like I said, they take a couple weeks off. And again, they do a whole bunch of the stuff. They just don't do the show. But they take a couple weeks off from the show, but then they're really working with their programs committee, starting to develop the next one. And we have Technovations too in the fall, which obviously they're working on right now, and our policy forum that we do in Washington, D.C. in September. So our meetings team is awesome. They stay busy. They make us look good.
I want to have Ken join us here for a second too, because I see Ken's in the waiting room, because Ken's going to be there. Hey, Ken.
What's up?
Ken, what's your take on TIA?
Well, since Chris is here, I'd say I love it. They're my favorite trade organization. None that I like better.
There we go. Well,
as much as Ohio State, or is less than Ohio State?
Yeah, somewhere in that rank order. That's near and dear. My wife, my kids, Ohio State, and then TIA is somewhere in that top 5.
Makes sense. There we go. Yeah, Ken, you're going to be a TIA, right?
Depends. The corp dev role that I've taken on at DAT comes with if you're working a deal or something, sometimes you get tied up. So I'm not sure. I can never plan too far ahead. But yeah, I've been to TIA I think 10 times in my career so far. So the only time I've missed it is when I've been changing diapers and making bottles. So and that's done. So there's no more of that.
Yeah. Well, DAT always has like a big booth at TIA.
We always have the booth, the first one when you walk in.
Yeah, and it's the biggest one, right?
Of course, biggest company in freight and logistics, biggest booth.
Yeah, there we go. So it's going to be exciting. I love that TIA always has it at like really nice resorts. Usually the JW Marriott, I believe. So it's like it's nice.
Last year they had a lazy river right out.
I think this year is going to have even a larger water park. I heard the water park's like massive in San Antonio.
Maybe I am going to go for sure then this year.
Bring the whole family.
Pitch out on some bankers, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, location makes a big difference, and like it's always a nice location, nice resort, and then you're like with all the freight people there. The organization of the event's great. So yeah, it'll be fun. Only 18 days away. So it's
right around the corner.
Yeah, it's coming right around the corner. Chris, thank you so much for joining today. Anything you'd like to add before we, I guess, segue into DAT and Kary and Ken?
I just appreciate the opportunity to be on, and look forward to seeing everybody here in 18 days for the show. And Ken, thanks for everything you guys do at DAT for us.
Oh, that was sorry, Kary.
What an entrance!
Super loud. Yeah, what an entrance. Sorry about that, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Very good.
Sorry,
appreciate it.
I'm here. Sorry, Chris. That was quite an entrance.
Yeah, what's going on, Kary? You're
drinking my coffee right now, so
yeah. What was the noises in the background? Was there like a cat flying around, or
no? I don't have a cat. I have a little trash can underneath my desk, and I was scooching my chair in, and I hit the trash can, and the top fell off.
Got it.
So well, that's where we're at.
Yeah, Ken's like, what's going on here?
No, I just woke up with some pretty gnarly Ohio. In Ohio right now, we're getting like the 7 seasons they call it, where it was 72 on Thursday, and it snowed last night. Like everyone's sick to some degree or another.
Yeah. I woke up. Yeah, it was yesterday morning. It's just all white, and then within about 6 hours, everything's all green again. So I'm like, same.
I don't understand it. I don't know why we live here sometimes.
You should come to Poland. It's like 60 degrees and sunny outside right now, so it's pretty nice.
Well, Kary and Ken, thank you so much for joining us here. Super excited to talk to you both. Ken, I don't think we've spoken maybe ever, so this is going to be kind of cool. First time for me, learning a little bit about you. But Kary, we've known each other for some time as well. You
welcome to Freight Gong Friday.
A lot of news recently, no?
Yeah. So for our audience, Trucker Tools got acquired by DAT. I think that was in December. If I'm not mistaken. Yep. Kary was the CEO of Trucker Tools, and now Kary, you transitioned to a new role, right, at DAT?
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about the whole acquisition? I want to hear everything that you're able to disclose about the acquisition, why it happened, especially late last year, and how it's all been going.
Yeah, I'll start with that. We'll go back in time a little bit. So last year, we ran a small process that led to the acquisition by DAT. And really what led up to that was we'd had a couple of really, really strong years of growth at Trucker Tools. We totally refocused the platform on visibility, and we'd started to really gain a nice stronghold there in visibility for freight brokerages. We built out our ELD network. We'd started to build on a bunch of additional features into our visibility platform. And we realized that in this space, you can continue to really grind it out and grow year over year, trying to acquire new customers, or you can join one of the big boys like DAT and really just kind of accelerate your own growth and your roadmap. So we decided that was the right move for the business. We thought we were going to have a bigger impact on the space if we were able to join forces with someone like DAT. And honestly, I kind of sensed, and I think it's something that a lot of folks talk about, that consolidation was coming. And generally, you want to be the first ones to that party. You don't want to be the last ones. So I thought it would be in the best interest of really everyone to get ahead of that, so we could kind of, in some ways, have our pick of the litter of where we ended up, and that led again to a pretty small process that we ran. We went out to maybe 5 or 6 potential buyers. And it was funny because I really didn't know the DAT team very well. I knew Ken just from the internet. And
we all know each other.
Yes, that's where we
Twitter
all
fam.
meet now. Yeah, he's part of the Twitter fam. And it was awesome to actually get to know a little bit more of the DAT team through the process. And I was kind of, in some ways, surprised that they were so interested, just because, again, I hadn't been as engaged with them, where I feel like I had pretty strong relationships with a number of the other big companies in the space. But we really clicked, and it was great timing given Jeff Clements, the new CEO, had started, I don't know, 6 or 7 months before I came to the team with the potential deal. And, you know, as DAT was thinking about how do they continue to serve customers across the life cycle of a load, obviously visibility is a huge part of that. And if you think about another part of the DAT strategy, it's in the whole IQ business and everything that Ken does, it's all about data, and our product is able to just spin off and create so much valuable data to feed back into that system and create a stronger product for customers. So it made a ton of sense, and was honestly, for my first time going through M&A, pretty smooth process. Pretty quick, I think. What I hear is that these usually take longer, but you know,
How long did it take?
I probably did my first presentation to the DAT team in early September, and we were closed. Wow. I mean, we'd signed the deal by November, and we announced in December. So really just a couple of months. So that's a shout out to Ken and probably the 18-hour days he was working to get that done behind the scenes.
Oh, really? So Ken, you were kind of the mastermind behind all this?
That's probably a stretch, but I took over M&A at DAT, you know, corp dev and partnerships, I don't know, to start 2024. So I was very fortunate. Trucker Tools was probably the 3rd or 4th deal we looked at in the year and hit, which is like a crazy kind of ratio. Usually you're maybe 10 to 1 looking at deals, maybe 20 to 1, depending.
Sure.
So for one of our first, so we were building the boat as we were rowing down the river, honestly. And it was great. I mean, our parent company, Roper, that's what they do that's their day to day. They buy companies and they generate free cash flow. They're a machine. They're probably the most underreported on public company out there of their size. They're like the 3rd or 4th largest tech company by market cap in their sector, which is like crazy to think about. Wow. But that's what they do. They spend money to make more money. And it's nice. They're kind of our superpower behind the scenes that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah. Are they publicly traded?
Yeah. They are. ROP. They've returned 18% to shareholders, total shareholder return, like 5 of the last 6 years.
All right. This is not financial advice, but it seems like it might be a good company to look into to invest.
They're some of the smartest people I've ever worked around or for. It's like 60 people working in a quiet office in Sarasota, Florida, but like to a person, they're all like wicked bright. So
very cool.
They helped us a lot. They do this every day, you know?
Yeah. So has DAT acquired any other companies since you took over M&A, Ken?
No. I would not have any hair left if that were the case. So, right, the thesis from a DAT perspective is we're looking for acquisitions that kind of are in markets where we have a high, what we call like right to win, which is not like a novel thing. That's a pretty common framework for M&A activity. But our goal is to enhance the experience for our customers, because we know if we could do that, then we're going to add value, which means if you add value, you can capture value. So it's all about like, hey, I'm a broker and I need to track. Why not marry a best-in-class pricing and capacity solution with a best-in-class tracking solution? It just makes sense from the customer's perspective. You know, I suspect this to be a very, very busy year for M&A in our industry. I think like extremely busy. It's already been a busy first quarter. And typically you don't see a ton of deals in the first quarter. Like it's usually second, third, and fourth that are loaded. People are digesting and closing their annual books and meeting with their boards in Q1, and then they're out spending money in the second, third, and fourth quarter. So I think it's gonna be a busy year. I can't speak on what we're going to be doing, but I think you're going to see a lot of bigger names in the freight space traded around this year.
Ken, how long have you been around at DAT, since you know like that when these deals typically take place in which quarters and so forth? Like, look kind of young.
I've been in 5 years, over 5 years since I joined. So I joined in December of 19, but I've been around the space. I was a DAT customer for a long time. I've been in the space for over a decade, 12-ish years last time I counted.
Yeah,
Cool.
you look kind of young. That's what Christian said. So
I mean, in a good way. I'm getting to the point where hopefully
I
people
put
are
cucumbers on
kinda
my eyes when I sleep. That's my secret.
Yeah.
I sleep with cucumbers on my eyes.
Cool. So getting acquired in December, and then we're almost done with Q1, which is absolutely insane. Time's flying by. How's everything been, Kary, on your side? You transitioned into a new role.
Yep.
What is that role?
Yeah, so it is a mouthful. It is my official title is the VP and GM of Broker Growth and Trucker Tools. So I'm going to break that down for you. Essentially, first and foremost, Trucker Tools and getting the business integrated and making sure that we're doing what we said we were going to do when we were prepping the deal has been kind of my first and foremost mandate. And that's been going awesome. I'm really, again, this is my first rodeo, but I'm really impressed with how quickly we're moving to integrate the business, the teams, and what we're doing. We've had a ton of success with selling Trucker Tools into the DAT customer base. We've already got a number of team members who have stepped up into bigger roles across the entire DAT team. So I'm really psyched with where we are there. We're really now getting into what are we doing with the products? How are they coming together? What does that roadmap look like? And that's going to be the fun stuff. And then the second part of the role is this concept of broker growth. So essentially what I'm doing is working with the entire broker facing teams at DAT. So the marketing team, the sales team, we've got a bunch of awesome new folks on the product side who are working on broker facing products and really kind of stewarding how do we continue to grow this business and how do we build products that help brokers grow their business. So I'm frankly still figuring out exactly what that involves day to day. It's been a lot of getting to know people, figuring out what their priorities are, and figuring out who we need to get working together in a different way. But bottom line is I'm here to help grow the broker business.
Cool.
Kary, is the
Exciting.
Trucker Tools branding still sticking around, particularly on the app, mobile app side?
Yeah, great question. Yes, we are absolutely keeping the brand. We still have 2 websites. We still have 2 mobile apps. We obviously still have the 2 products, and I still have my Trucker Tools email. So the plan right now is to not change anything there. The Trucker Tools brand is pretty strong. And I actually think that was part of what was interesting to DAT in the acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely want to take advantage of that. So we're still figuring out. There are so many things to figure out. Yeah. I don't think I fully appreciated how many things you have to figure out when you buy a company, and down to the most minute of the minute of what are we doing with these brands? What's the plan moving forward? So it's going to take a while to really bring it all together, but we are absolutely keeping the brand.
And we have Dial a Truck, DAT, we have Trucker Tools, and by reacquisition of brand, we have Get Loaded.
Okay.
So I think those are the best properties, trademark properties in the industry. Get Loaded is, I think, the single best freight name that exists.
Do you guys?
I would disagree. I would say Freight Caviar is, but
Touche.
Respectfully disagree. But
do you guys know Get Loaded?
I mean, I know there was a load board that got acquired.
Yeah.
I think it was a huge player, right? DAT got acquired Get Loaded. So when you go to getloaded.com, it goes directly to DAT, right? Is that what it does, or just redirects you?
I've never tried that. Let me see.
Yeah, so people listening here, instead of going to DAT.com, you can just go to getloaded.com.
No, it just goes to Get Loaded.
But it says DAT's guide to everything you need to start your trucking business.
I gotta try this.
It's like a website from 1995.
Ken, could you redirect it to Freight Caviar?
I can't, actually.
Oh,
well,
wow.
I could, but it's going to cost you probably.
We could figure out a deal here.
We could. Hey, I'm all for it.
This must be the website from
Wait, I'm gonna pull this up. I'm gonna share the screen here.
Get Loaded was founded in 1999, basically the peak of the .com boom.
But they made it.
And when did DAT buy them?
2008.
They made it through. That's most important, I guess.
I mean, it doesn't look that bad, but so I'm just curious as to why. So DAT owns this getloaded.com. Is it Get Loaded, or am I messing it up?
Get Loaded, yeah.
Okay, so DAT owns this website, but it's just branded Get Loaded still.
I think it might be retro chic, because if you go under find loads and scroll down, those are the correct current package prices.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
that's interesting. Okay, so the brand still lives.
It never died. Yeah, I think it's the best brand in freight.
I wonder if this is tied into our website, Ken, and that's
it has to be.
I would be surprised if someone's coming on here and updating pricing, but
it could just tie back. Like it could just be pulling those web page elements from the actual source of the package pricing.
It could be, yeah.
I mean, this looks better than the
It's a heck of a
Technicals
deal.
website when I started.
$50 a month.
I'm impressed.
1 million loads a week.
So, Ken, DAT Power no longer exists, right? Or does it?
Correct. Well, I mean, it's probably still running just in case we ever need to go back and look at it. But for all intents and purposes, everyone's off of it.
So, like, I know that there was a lot of like backlash for some people that really like DAT Power. Like, what do you say to people that like were like, you know, why don't you give the option of at least having like DAT Power or DAT1 when you're a customer?
I mean, step one, I would recommend the short book, Who Moved My Cheese? I think that's a great place to start. I think
why is that? Can you explain that?
It's a book about change, about how no one likes change and how mice, when you move their cheese, they get upset. I think, and that's my cheeky answer. My serious answer is like, look, I think when change is hard, especially when it's an operational program. If you've ever talked to a broker that's had their TMS changed, when I was at FedEx, we deployed McLeod and we had been on an AS400 homegrown system for 20 years before that. And to a person, no one liked it. But they also didn't like, you know, when the system was down or that they couldn't do this, or it was like it took 8 weeks to change equipment types. So I think like modern web architecture, like we're at 3 nines right now. So if you're not familiar with that, that means we're at 99.9% availability and we're knocking on the door of 4 nines, which honestly for a business like ours, you would expect 4 nines more in like the banking or like super highly available sector. So if we can get to 4 nines, and you know, again, I think with that, you have to get to platforms like DAT1 or replatform rate view onto DAT IQ. You just have to do those things, right? So a lot of work behind the scenes that just bore people, but moving to a full microservice architecture, moving to full cloud deployment versus on-prem. And it's just, like I said, sometimes it's definitely more secure. We can do things like strong auth. So, you know, between strong auth and MFA, strong auth is when you use like your fingerprint or your face to authenticate as opposed to storing a password. It makes it essentially unhackable, right? Unless you cut someone's finger off, I guess, before it loses blood flow. But short of that, it's all those things. Like, it's, again, we sympathize, and our product team is awesome. Like, you'll see me out there, right? People tag me or Kary. Even some of the most angry, upset customers we put in front of product, and they're usually a lot more disarmed at that point. It's a lot harder to be an a-hole, you know, person to person with a product design person than it is typing it on the internet. So we're implementing a ton of changes. It's just, I think it's going to take a while to get people familiar with the new product.
Okay, got it.
I remember using DAT few years, like, I don't know, 6 years ago, I think it was, and it was definitely pretty difficult for me to like kind of understand, like there were so many different DAT products, and I just didn't know like which way to log in through to this one or to that one. I think it was like Rate View was one, Power was another. So it's good that you guys are consolidating it and at least making it a little bit simpler.
It takes me a while. I mean, I've used Rate View every day for 12 years, every business day pretty much. And like the new platform, it takes me a little longer to use it. But like once you get used to it and you see that they're adding new features every day, you know, you can't do that with the old one. It'll break.
So Ken, so just on the topic of Rate View, what's going on in the market? I'm curious if you could dig in and give us some deets.
Reefer really stinks. I don't think there's any two ways about that. Or if you're in refrigerated freight right now, you're not having a great time. If you're in flatbed freight, you're having
Is produce just dead right now? Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, it just hasn't really picked up as much yet. I think just nationally, the demand. I don't know if you've seen some of the charts on like restaurant visits or at the lowest restaurant receipts, or at the lowest point since like the depths of COVID when you couldn't eat in. So like, I think inflation is really grabbing folks there. A lot of restaurants have put in food price surcharges and whatnot. So you can think about that. Flatbeds are booming for sure. Like think about like the Bakken, Utica, Permian shale basins and domestic oil production ramping up to drive down energy prices. Steel and other aluminum and extruded metals moving around on flatbeds. And then dry vans are just kind of in the middle. It's probably better than last year, but not great. That's kind of the market overview.
What do you foresee in the future for all this?
I mean, I don't know. We could try to have Cuba as the 51st state tomorrow. I don't really know. Like, I mean, there's really this thing of like, I think volatility is really, really good for freight brokers. Make no mistake about that. But this is like too much. This is like if we get the sense that tariffs are here for the long haul, I think we'll hold steady to our forecast, which is like a Q2 systemic recovery, bleeding it like a very tepid, like a 2013-esque recovery starting in Q2, and then pushing out into the tail half of the year. If there's still this wobbliness, go ahead.
Okay, can you just clarify for me real quick? If tariffs, would you say afterwards?
Well, either if they go away for good or if they stick for good, I think we'll start to see like our forecast go back to in range. If it's still this like up and down volatility of day to day, is it on, is it off, then I think it could really stall a recovery for the entire balance of the year.
Okay, I know that Kary posted last week, I think on LinkedIn, about like the Canadian cross-border freight into the U.S. I could pull that up here real quick because I am curious. When I was in El Paso, Texas 2 weeks ago, and I went to Juarez, and I was talking to Mesilla Valley Transportation. They said they had the best week they ever had as a company the weekend prior, because it was right before all the tariffs were set to come in, and everyone was just shipping goods out of Mexico into these warehouses in southern Texas, so that it's just front loaded. Wondering what's going on, I guess, on the cross-border section. Since Kary, you posted that, I will share it here, and maybe you and Ken could discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, well, Ken made that graph, so I'm just stealing his things. He's the smart one here, but
I don't think so.
What you saw on that graph when you pull it up is basically that is exactly what the folks that you visited in Juarez said, that it was an insane week and everyone freaked out. And just like Ken said, there was a massive amount of volatility and uncertainty in the market, or introduced in the market whenever that was, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it led to incredible things for carriers that you can see that that if you scroll down that orange line right there. So this was Canada, not Mexico. That orange line was is rate per mile. You can see that crazy spike. And those green
7-day moving average for the orange line, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And then the green bars down below is load volume. So you can see there's just a pretty big drop in volume coinciding with a massive spike there. And rates have started to normalize a little bit. This chart's like a week old, so I'm pretty sure it's continued to come down from there. But if you just look at the bottom green, just absolutely falling off a cliff there from Canada. It's not like all trade has stopped at all. That has not been the case at all. But there was just, like, again, Ken said, there was a massive moment of uncertainty. It's almost like hurricane-esque in that everyone had to move right now and get on it. And now we're, I think, in kind of the like, let's wait and see. Is this for real? Is this not for real? How long is this going to happen? How intense is it? Phase of the tariff setting.
So what are the expectations here in a way? Like, I guess, I mean, I kind of asked you that.
I think they're here to stay. Well, I think from what I'm seeing, I'm curious what you guys think, but it does seem like they're going to not take their foot off the gas here with the tariffs, which, to Ken's point, it seems like one way or another, provided that it's at least certain which way it goes, that at least it will help yield a faster return to a recovery. If I understood your take on that, Ken, correctly, right? It's just like uncertainties bad, effectively.
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, I think the administration believes that they can bully the Fed into lowering rates, which would offset tariffs, and it would create the illusion. And again, this isn't like a political commentary. It would create the illusion that things are better off, because if interest rates come down, it relieves like this massive pressure off the chest of the American economy, right? And it'll be great for freight because home building, construction projects, buying new cars, all of the things, like interest rates are a massive governor kind of on the freight market. So, but I don't know. You can't just, the Federal Reserve is an independent institution the last time I checked. So Jerome Powell doesn't have to do what the administration wants. So we'll see. It's interesting times.
It is.
Yeah. Very interesting times. Well, I know aside from all this tariff stuff and everything, DAT Con is happening in Chicago this year in October, if I'm not mistaken. Is it October?
It's going to be September this year.
Actually.
Yeah, we moved it up.
September. Okay, cool. So first of all, I'm kind of curious if you tell us a little more about DAT Con, and also I know it's in Chicago this year. Is this the first time it's happening in Chicago, or is this, I guess, is it happening?
Yeah.
Okay, it's the first time. Okay.
Oh, really?
Kind of curious about just the conference it's in general. I know that Chicago's a little bit tougher to do a conference because of all the unions and stuff. At least Craig Fuller once tweeted about how they did a FreightWaves conference in Chicago before, and it was very expensive for them to have. So
that feels like some political commentary.
Yeah.
What?
Well, it just like the cost of like the union workers and all that stuff to set it all up, and it was a pain.
Well,
So
compared
how
to
about this?
Chattanooga, but like not
Yeah,
compared to
we just
another modern
wages are
American
higher
city.
in Chicago than
Yeah, so
Chattanooga.
Kary,
I
then
think
let
that's
us
all
know.
it is. I
Let
don't
us
think
know in October what how this whole process went, and we can pull up Craig's tweet and see how it compares. So we'll see.
I love
But
going
yeah.
back to Craig's old tweets and seeing how they played out.
Yeah, especially reading the op-ed; those are fantastic.
Yes.
Where
Do
do
you want to? Should we get
what
into this
opinions do you
topic?
have
real
on the
quick or
op-ed?
No need. Let's
No
talk DATCon. Let's talk
Let's talk
DATCon.
DATCon. If we have time, we can get into it. Sure.
Sounds good.
So
We gotta get Craig
DATCon,
in here too. I think this would be awesome.
that would be
It would
fun.
be. I would love it.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Not today.
Um,
I have a
Craig,
headache.
if you're listening, let's get this going. But okay, all right, Kary, go ahead.
DATCon.
So this is my first DATCon. Wasn't allowed to go last year. That's okay. It is our user conference. So we bring a number of folks from the team to talk about what we're doing as a business, what products we're launching, what's coming, feedback we're hearing, how we're incorporating that into DAT. And really, it's just an opportunity for brokers to send power users, folks who are really managing the DAT instance at their brokerage, to understand exactly what we're doing, give us feedback, and get really trained up. I think there's a lot of cool stuff we could be doing, especially with it in Chicago. There's just a massive opportunity to really blow this thing up. If you think about, I think we looked at our contacts. There's like 10,000 contacts in the DAT CRM that are within 50 miles of where we're having the event. So we're still kind of working through the exact details of what's going to happen, but that's the premise. I haven't been before, so Ken, I don't know. What do you have to add?
I mean, I owe genuinely a lot of, to the degree that I've accomplished actually anything, but the degree to which I owe a lot to what it used to be called the DUC, the DAT User Conference. So I was invited to speak as a kind of senior analyst at FedEx to come talk about how I was using data to do pricing models. And I'm a dork behind a desk. Public speaking was like not my thing. Went to Portland, Oregon and did it. And that kind of like changed some things from a career trajectory perspective. So, and DATCon has changed a lot since then, to be honest. Back then, it was mostly carrier sales and ops folks. This past year in Kansas City, we were over 50% pricing and analytics folks. So the dynamic is changing. We also have our shipper event at the same time. So we have about 120 Fortune 500 shippers who buy our benchmark analytics product come. And it really is a practitioners conference. It's not like dunk tanks and all that stuff. We did have racing armadillos one year, but it really is, when you're there, kind of like a day and a half of truly like intense industry focused. Like we had Chad Olison and Jonathan Salama come and talk about automated and algorithmic freight pricing, and to a standing, like the whole they were out the door. We had like fire code violation to get people in because they're writing stuff down, because it's more of a practitioners. It's not a sales conference. And those are great too. Had tickets go on sale, thanks Georgia. But yeah, it truly is. It's exhausting. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Craig's team, because putting on these events is beyond exhausting, and I'm not even the one like schlepping the stuff around just to be there. But it really is great if you're a freight pricing person, a carrier sales rep, an account exec looking how to like optimize your outbound techniques. But we're fans, I think.
Yeah, every time I see Craig at when we stop at F3, like he's exhausted by the time the conference comes around. But then like once the conference is taking place, he's at least a little bit more relaxed. But it is pretty stressful to put on an event of that size. Coordinating food, coordinating like just making sure people are accommodated. It's if it goes bad, it's just horrible for their reputation.
Yeah, our events team, to give them a shout out, they're small but mighty. Like last year, we did the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in Kansas City as our kind of out of take the little chaperoned field trip, and it was unbelievably awesome. Like the experience was truly great, and it's small enough. We'll have maybe 400 or 500 people at ours, so it's not very, very big. And they all have that common thread of, and it sounds so corny, but like using DAT. So like they can start talking about things and they kind of pair up and whatnot. And it's a pretty good vibe.
Well, this will be my first DAT event, so I will. I'm very much looking forward to putting in a review here. How these events go.
We'll make some DAT memes.
Yeah, some DAT memes. I think everyone thinks we get there and just like, I don't know, talk about how to make the software go down on a Monday morning, but that's just not the case at all, right? Like it truly is. I learn a lot and I work here.
There you go. I do just want to bring up, I know this is really random, but Georgia and Kary share almost exactly the same identical last name, and it's like Polish roots.
Wait.
So yeah.
I just
I never
noticed
noticed that.
You guys,
Yeah,
that was the
so-
first thing I noticed when I really got on
and
Slack.
and I'm like,
That's
I'm on this
crazy.
email chain, and I'm just like, wow, we have to talk about this for a little bit at least. I feel like you might have like some relatives or something, and like Georgia's family decided to get rid of the SKI.
Well, it's funny, Georgia, definitely chime in here if I'm misrepresenting your family history. But Georgia is from the Philly area, and my Jablonskis are also from the Philly area. We're Polish, so came over from my great-grandfather came over from Poland to Philly. What's funny is there's already I have a huge family on that side. My brothers and I and my dad spell our last name differently than all my cousins. There's actually a second O after the N. So if you can see it on my screen here, there's a second O. Yeah. And actually his father had a W in there. So it was 2 generations ago, it was Jablonowski, still pronounced Jablonski. But there's been a lot of just like dropping of vowels. I don't think there's been any actual legal changing in our names. So I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, maybe the Jablons just really rent road.
You should have 23andMe at DAT and see if
we should.
Family there.
I've never done that. I'm a little scared to do that. I have friends who
I'm not giving the Chinese my DNA.
Yeah, they're 23andMe is owned by a private equity company. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think it's Chinese owned. It's not like there's a whole bad.
Oh, I'm more like I literally have friends who have discovered like half siblings from 23andMe, and I think I'm good knowing what I know about my family.
Yeah.
I don't need to know anything more right now.
We found someone who found out they were switched at birth and were raised by the wrong parents, and they lived in the same town.
Oh wow,
that's some Ohio stuff right there.
Georgia said that originally. It's funny that Georgia's originally from Szodza. I saw there's a dairy company in Szodza, and I was driving today from Warsaw to Lublin, and I was just driving by a truck that it was like Szodza Dairy translation. So that's a small world.
So we're my family's all Catholic, so we're the Catholic Jablonskis, but we can all be friends.
Like a feud brewing.
Well, so I did a 23andMe for my grandma a few years ago, and it turned out that she's 6% Ashkenazi Jewish, just because this region had a large Jewish population, and she had no idea beforehand. We had no idea, so it was I guess until you do 23andMe, you really don't know.
Have you ever seen the people will swab a banana and send it in, and it'll give them like I don't think those things are actually that accurate. Just from an analytics perspective, just I've seen people they've swabbed 3 fruits and they've got
Okay, that's an interesting point. I did it for myself, and then I did it for my grandparents, and it was very accurate. It all made sense, right? From the it would be difficult for it all to line up the way it did, and the way it got connected. So I don't know. I have faith in it for whatever reason, but
I think the problem is there's a temporal nature to it. Again, I'm not trying to insult anyone's religion here, but at some point we all crawled out of the same goo, right? So we can all kind of be traced back to the same primordial tar pit kind of deal. And depending on how far back it's going, there is some mixing where it all kind of originates from the same general place.
I love how we ended this conversation here, because I think this is a great spot to end it. We do have to run for a meeting, but we haven't ended a conversation on Freight Gong Friday when it to do with DNA and ancestry, but that was a great way to end it. And Ken, Kary, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you both.
Look forward to hopefully seeing you both at DAT, not at DAT, sorry, at TIA that's coming up, and then DAT in September. So wishing you both an amazing Friday and an amazing weekend, and we will talk soon.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.